Hello and welcome back. I'm Sam Zagar. Today we're talking about emotional wave mechanics. We're going to explore the wave mechanics that come out of the solar plexus and what kind of effects that they have on us. I had a really good time explaining this to my class last Tuesday when we finished the centers course. And I saved the solar plexus for the last center to talk about just because of the nuance and complexity with it. And I'm going to share a couple of things that they hit really well in that class. They helped me understand a few things, and I think they're going to help you understand a few things too. So, we're going to break this into circuitry. So, when we're looking at the emotional waves coming out of the solar plexus, let's start with tribal circuitry. And if we start with tribal circuitry, I want you to look at gate 6 coming out of the solar plexus, which makes the channel of mating. This is the only emotional channel that directly connects to the sacral center. The channel of mating is different from the other two tribal channels that we have in the solar plexus because it's the mother of all waves. And so ultimately, gate six is this portal. It's where the motor lives. It's the opening to intimacy. There's an opening portal into the solar plexus that happens with gate 6. Now, the channel of mating's wave is quite mild, is quite neutral, and typically people with the channel of mating are much more aware of how they feel or where they're at in their wave when they come into physical contact with somebody else. We can also understand that because anything that is tribal has a keynote of touch and support. There's a quality of physicality leaning on people. If you go hug someone with the channel of mating, they're going to be slightly more in tune to how they're feeling than if no one had come into their bubble. With the other two tribal channels, this is where the wave changes. So we're either dealing with the channel of community that goes from the ego to the solar plexus, or we're dealing with the channel of synthesis that goes from the root to the solar plexus. Both of these are tribal waves. Now they have a ratchet quality to them, as in there's an up, drop, up, but as it's going up, it's like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, drop, up, down, up, down. And so the up, down is like ratchet, 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 ratchet. It's like kind of like that. It's like, no, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to get angry. I'm going to get, okay. So there's a different quality here. And again, touch, tribal, support. Which of the emotional waves is likely to be more physically abusive? Tribal waves. True statement. And it's not just picking on people. If you're a tribal person and you're offended, you should only be offended if you're a physical person. Probably only offended if you got a little bit called out there because when you get angry, you want to hit something. Doesn't mean you do. Certainly doesn't mean you should, but you're definitely going to want to. Within individual circuitry, we have not a mild wave, definitely not a mild wave, but we have the most consistent for the longest periods of time, usually, as in it's a bit of an even keel, but then you get a big spike up or a big spike down. But it's relatively maintained with these punctuations of high and low, which makes it look a little bit more like a heartbeat, like okay, so that's our individual wave. Fairly mild, pretty big extreme spikes. For the individual waves, we were dealing with the channel of openness and emoting. Okay, so for our collective waves, we're dealing with transitoriness and recognition. Transitoriness is throat to solar plexus, and recognition is root to solar plexus. But when you're dealing with a collective wave, it's almost like the tribal wave, but it doesn't have the ratchet quality. It's just up, drop, like peak, valley, high, low. So there's a little bit of a more like you're just quite ramping up. It's not like ramp drop. That's the tribal ratchet wave. Okay, so now that we understand three different kind of like flows for the wave, the next thing I'm going to do is change the way that you've been seeing this. Now, I just started kind of with emotional content in the last video. And even in the last video, I watched myself do this for explaining the emotional wave, right? Like we're going up, down, because it's easier to understand in the beginning as a 2D flat wave. I don't know if any waves are actually 2D flat waves though. So it's only a perspective thing. when we're looking at the wave like it's doing this, what we're really communicating is that there's the high, there's the low, somewhere along here is a neutral, but it's not like this. It's like this. I wasn't quite sure how to express that so that y'all would actually see the difference, but it's not up, down like this. It's a spiral with an up, down. So think about it as you're spiraling low, high, neutral, low, high, neutral, like you're looping around a thing. Now I'm going to go from horizontal to vertical in how I express that. A lot of people were thinking that the wave would be like up and down, like just up, down, up, down. It's not like that. It's like this, up, like it keeps going like this. Like you might be down, then you're medium, then you're up, then you're down, then you're medium, then you're up. I want you to think about almost like a building, and then the wave is going around the building. Now, when you're looking at the building, what the building represents is the decision you're about to have to make. This is the thing that you don't have clarity on. The building is the thing that you don't have the clarity on. Now, if you only go up and down, you're not getting a lot of perspective. But if you go like this, what you're actually able to understand is that the wave is taking you through a spiral experience of up, down, neutral, according to your wave. So it's not just like this. I'm like, oh man, these get more complex to be able to live out. But the tribal one would be like, like it's ratcheting up and down, whereas the individual one would be like, like it's, oh my god, I'm gonna cough. And then the collective one is just like, yeah, yeah. Like it's, what kind of ride are you on? Now, also, what's the point of like the high low? When you're in a low place, how does that change the perspective on something? When you're in a high place, how does that again change the perspective on something? Now, what is even meant by low and high? Again, those are very basic introductory words, but I'm going to give you some alternative words to use instead of high and low, and maybe you'll feel more recognized in what your emotions are. For example, maybe your wave moves you from hope to pain, hope to pain. The low point is the pain, it's the crash. The high point is the hope, it's the oh, what could be, what could be. And I'm not talking about like an actual motivation, I'm talking more of an emotional quality. We're also working with expectation and disappointment. Like that feels so collective to me, the collective expectation, and then the disappointment of like the human experiential way not working out. There's joy to despair, like such a wonderful positive feeling and such a drop down deep pit kind of feeling. Now, why do you go low and why do you go high? Emotional chemistry. Honestly, go back to the other emotional video. That one's going to go more in depth into like, why do we go high? Why do we go low? But the point of this video was to get people out of this kind of idea for the wave, because it wouldn't even be like that. It'd be like, except it's like this, it's spiraling up and around. And when we talked about this in class, one of my students said, what if you have two? What if you have more than one emotional wave? You have a few rides. Like you might have one doing this and one doing this and one going like, as in that's a way of saying you got a lot of complexity going on inside you. If you have that much complexity, you need that much patience to wait for your clarity. I think the last thing that I want to say about this is, what if you're not emotionally defined at all? What kind of ride are you on? You're on all of these rides. You're on all of these rides depending on who walks into the room. You can be taken on a lot of rides. And I want you to understand that you're amplifying. If you are emotionally undefined or totally open, and someone with a defined solar plexus walks in and they bring you their emotional wave, you're going to become aware of it. You're going to sense it. You're going to pick it up. You're going to feel it. But do you have the discernment, the awareness, and the intelligence to know if what you're feeling belongs to you, or if you've actually just picked up somebody else's emotional wave? Learning human design hugely helps with that. I'm not an emotionally defined person. When people rock my boat really quickly emotionally, I start looking around like, where did that come from? Not what's wrong with me. And don't get me wrong, that's not to say that I'm like not willing to look at myself for anything like that. But with human design, it shows you where to look. So I'm just not looking at myself for all the wrong, confusing things. So exploring emotional mechanics. What ride are you on? Why don't you tell me about it in the comment section? Because one thing I've learned when I want to encourage people to say things, when emotional people are contributing to the conversation, everyone in the comment section is usually very, very, very grateful. Emotionality is quite complex. It's very misunderstood, even though so many people have this definition. If you have something that you agreed with or didn't agree with, or you found supportive in, or extra things that you want to say to what I had to say, honestly, I would love to see this in the comment section. So I'll read those, and I guess I'll see you next time.